So next up are two amazing women, journalists, writers, editors, all of those things that we associate with strong content and leadership and voice. We have Maria Menounos, who you guys have probably heard of, yes, who has been a long time voice for women, and her personal stories are now really captivating many of us. And we have Pilar Guzman, who is the editor-in-chief for Condé Nast Traveler, and we're going to introduce these guys, have them come out and tell you about how they've been looking at content and how Maria's been building a platform around her evolving voice.
I have the pleasure of getting to talk to you about things that are both intimate, personal, but also incredibly relevant to everyone, I think, not just in this room, but probably everybody in the world. You had an incredible year last year. I read your, looking at your CV, I feel like I should, become a professional ice skater and maybe, try and get my PhD or something. I mean, it's incredible what you've done and what you do. And I think that is very relevant to this conversation, which is really about self-care. And your story is so inspiring. So in 2017, I'm going to let you tell the story, but
cheeks are shaking already. Oh gosh.
Okay. You were engaged, and then there was just a series of events that changed your life. So I'm going to let you tell the story.
So, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I had kind of a crazy 2 years. So my mom, sometime in 2016, started getting really tired, like really tired. And my mom is somebody who gets 20,000 steps a day without blinking. And she was exhausted. And we were working on my cookbook, our cookbook. And she was really tired and sleepy, and my uncle was, suffering from cancer, and we were dealing with that. And she was getting tons of sinus infections. And I kept asking doctors, I said, why is this happening? Because I knew there's a problem. Why is she getting so many sinus infections? And I asked a lot of people, and nobody had an answer. And I would get her checked because I'm in charge of my parents' medical care and have been running their affairs for probably 17 years now. And my dad's a severe type 1 diabetic, so I've always been really kind of in charge of everything. So long story short, my uncle passes away. A week later, we find out my mom has brain cancer. And it was the most excruciating time, it's so hard to talk about, of my life, because my mom is my everything, as you all probably feel the same way about your moms. And that's a diagnosis that is like beyond devastating. Like, she has the worst cancer you could ever have, period, end of story. And I'll never forget, I was supposed to go interview Renee Zellweger for Bridget Jones' Diary 2 in London that next day. And I got the call when I was in Los Angeles, and my parents were on the East Coast, and I just dropped to the ground in this parking lot. I was at a charity event for dog rescue, and I just collapsed and had to pick myself up and go get on a plane. And I'll never forget my mom in the hospital, and it was just us two. Everyone had just left to go get some food, and the doctor came in and said, "You have brain cancer." And my mom said, "Okay." Didn't cry, nothing. And inside I was just like, oh my God, what does this mean? Like, is she gonna die? What's gonna happen? And so we dealt with that. She had surgery successfully. I watched her go in with a smile. She's my champion. And she came out with a smile. And a couple months later, well, soon after, I wasn't feeling well. I was hosting E! News at the time, and I was really tired. And I figured it was because I now had to maintain this crazy busy lifestyle of being in front of the camera, and I'm hosting E! News, I'm hosting a radio show on Sirius XM, I'm running a digital network called AfterBuzz TV, and writing books and all these things. I was just such a doer. And I'm tired. and I can't keep my eyes open. And then, I'm getting lightheaded every day, and my speech is slurring.
But you ignored a bunch of your symptoms for a while.
I did. I thought it was just, I honestly thought it was just stress because they're pretty similar symptoms.
Sure.
And I would joke on set. I would slur my speech and I'd be like, sorry guys, it's my stupid brain tumor.
Right.
Totally kidding. And then I found out I had a brain tumor too. And it was just like the sickest, craziest of events because you would never in a million years think that this could happen. Even the doctor, Dr. Keith Black, who's our hero and has been in both my mom and I's brain at this point. He was at my birthday party this year. I'm like, is it weird you've been in both of our brains now? He was like, I said to him, I go, so you see this mother-daughter tumor thing often? He's like, nope. And I said, well, surely, because you think mine's benign, mine's an easier surgery. And he's like, nope.
Yeah.
And so I had almost 8-hour brain surgery last June on my birthday. I looked at it as a rebirth, and it has been. And I stand here today, thank you. I stand here today even stronger than I ever thought I could ever be. And I've learned a lot, and I have a whole new perspective on life that I'd love to share with you all, because I want to help you in your journeys. And my mom, coincidentally, is doing unbelievably, miraculously well as well. So thank you.
And to that point, because we spent a little bit of time the other day talking about this, that the need to be your own best advocate, medical advocate, and emotional advocate, really, this topic is so rich right now because we are sitting at the intersection of medicine and care and wellness, and these are seemingly different lanes. And you shared with me you had gotten your mom on a diet because you had done your research, and the doctors were basically like, nah, none of that matters. So talk to us a little bit about how important it is to be your own advocate, to do your homework, and to fight for what you know, to go with your gut.
Yeah, so I learned so much. First of all, my mom's a Greek immigrant. Her English isn't great. And so I've always had to be the translator since I was little, and I've always had to be in charge. So I was a little boss from a young age. And so with my mom's medical care, it wasn't like I just held her hand and took her through everything. So I was in charge of everything, which was a huge weight on my shoulders because everything lived and died by my decisions, my choices. They weren't her choices necessarily. And so although I would include her in things, she just looked to me and said, I trust you. And so I remember after surgery, I'll give you a couple of examples of why you need to be your own advocate, why you need someone in your life to be a partner in this, because when you're in the hot seat, it's hard. You need help. And so my husband was my rock and my everything when I went through surgery, and he advocated for me when the doctors wanted me to walk before I could walk, and they wanted me to do things that I couldn't do yet. So in this journey of health, it's so important that you realize that you can't just lay your faith and your trust in these doctors solely, because you're an individual, and everybody's different, and only you know you as well as you do. And ultimately, you have to make choices on what your gut feels. And, some of you may believe in God or some other higher power. I believe in God, and I used that through the whole journey, and I prayed a lot. And it might sound crazy to people, but God gave me answers every time. God led me to the right people, brought the right people, and so I'll never forget, my mom came out of surgery, and I was feverishly researching, and I said to the neurosurgeons team who came to visit my mom, it wasn't Dr. Black, it was some other neurosurgeons, and I said, hey, I've been researching this ketogenic diet, and what do you think? And, at that point, I'm still kind of puppy dog, like, what do you think, experts? And they're like, we watch patients' families torture these poor people and make them suffer more. Just let her eat what she wants. And I got violent. I was like, but wait, when you perform an MRI, you know you inject us with sugar for a reason, right? You know this is an anti-sugar diet because sugar feeds off cancer, right? And so Dr. Black, God bless him, was all on board with it. He's like, listen, it's not going to hurt. We don't have all of the research in that this is something helpful, but why not? Put my mom on that. Another time, this was just...
But she also got better, right? I mean, that's...
Got better.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, when you look at statistics for what my mom has, if we had listened to statistics, and by the way, statistics are just numbers. Again, individuals. We have to look at each other. So I don't want to go off of that, but if I listened to them, she would have been gone at least 6 months ago. At least.
And as you've defied the odds, or as she's defied the odds, the doctors then turned and said, whatever you're doing is right.
Yeah, the doctors at Dana-Farber were like, we've never seen a patient consistently do better and better with what your mom has, so keep doing what you're doing. But a few weeks before I got diagnosed, my mom's MRI came up and they said that her tumor was growing. Now with glioblastoma, does anyone in here have experience with glioblastoma? Okay, so you know when they say your tumor's growing, it's like, there's nothing worse you could ever hear. It's like, it's a freight train that's not gonna stop. And so I go into like freak out mode, but at the same time, I had a board, an advisory board I created of different top doctors across the country, and I would submit them her information and get opinions from everybody, and then pray, sit with it, and make a decision from there. And everyone had a different thing they wanted to do. One institution wanted to operate immediately. Another one wanted to put her on this high-powered drug that she would never be able to get off of, and we're gonna give her horrendous symptoms. Luckily, at Cedars, Dr. Rudnick, our oncologist, was like, you know, we could wait, I don't know, maybe we should try the Avastin. He was really patient and amazing. And I said to him, I was like, you know what, let me just take my mom on a little vacation. We went to Mexico. I had pre-researched a facility in Mexico that a lot of people had had success with different kinds of cancers. And the next morning I had prayed the night before, and I said, God, please tell me where I'm supposed to take her and what I'm supposed to do next. And just so happened on my computer, up popped the side effects of chemo. I had never really read them. I just knew chemo makes you throw up. But when I looked at the side effects, I said, wow, those exactly mirror the symptoms of regrowth. And when you look at an MRI, even the best neurologists can't tell you exactly what they see. They need to go in and biopsy or operate to see. So I said, why are we treating this as regrowth, going into panic mode, when we could treat it as side effects of chemo? So I took her to Mexico, I detoxed her off the chemo, cleaned out her system, and they put her on CBD and tons of other supplements and stuff that I knew wouldn't interact with anything. And also, I didn't put her on any of this while she was on her chemo 6 days a week or whatever.
Did you tell the Cedars doctor that you were
Nope.
doing this? You just
Nope.
did it. Ballsy.
No, I just did it, and I used my gut, and I prayed, and I was like, okay, we're gonna be fine, and it's baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Like I baby stepped everything, I was very careful. I knew the list of things from Cedars that would have a problem with chemo from the get-go, because I had asked, and so I didn't do that. I made sure, because chemo gets out of your system within 24 hours, so I would apply all of these techniques after. Long story short, my mom comes back. Well, when I got her to Mexico, I found out I had a brain tumor that day, which was awful, and I couldn't tell them. But so after she left Mexico, she came back, and she's only had her tumor shrink or stay stable since last May. On the marijuana, the CBD, on the ketogenic diet, on all of the other holistic things that we've done. Because the other part to this that people don't tell you, a lot of people go to doctors, they tell you the medicine to take, you take it, you think you're doing what you need to do, but there's an emotional component to this that people don't really talk about. And there's usually some trauma, some sadness that's gone on in your life that you need to address. So before my mom had surgery, it was really important to me to make sure that we address those things and that apologies were made to my mom that needed to be made for whatever it was, and that we took her to spiritual healers, we took her to a priest, and we had those moments where she could have a cathartic experience to let this pain out.
Yeah.
So we were treating it like full circle, like every angle of it we didn't give up on.
And doctors will only sort of, and they can work miracles for sure. This is to not discredit anything, but I do think that everybody sort of swims in their own lane. And there's always a desire whenever there's medical trauma to have you being you, we're able to pull these different advisors and these different disciplines together. So my question for you is, how do you tell people who are not you, who don't have the platform, who may not feel the empowered or have the voice to advocate that way? And also, how do you listen to your gut? I mean, I think you have been incredibly rigorous in your research, and so that, we make informed decisions based on a lot of different opinions. But what are your mantras? How do you get to that sort of place? How can we sort of share that with the room?
Well, to be honest, and not in a pluggy way, I talk about this stuff on my radio show every day.
Yeah.
I've created a podcast by the same name as my show, Conversations with Maria, where every Friday we're bringing in all of these experts and all of these healers that are speaking to this every day, because I want to be able to help more people than just the few I'm interacting with. So since last July, I was laid up in bed for a long time, recovering. I've coached probably 31 people through brain surgery. And so I call them my patients, and sometimes I'll call Dr. Black up and I'll be like, I have a patient, she's got this, and we need help. And so I'm helping as many individuals as I can, but I'm also working on developing a show where I can teach people how to have the roadmap for success when you are dealt this blow, because I don't think there's probably one person in this room that hasn't dealt with cancer or had someone in their life that they love deal with cancer. And I want to help provide that roadmap to the best of my ability. And by the way, the women that I've collaborated with on this project all have dealt with it and have amazing ideas as well. There are so many hacks, so many shortcuts. People will help. And so I want to do that on a larger scale.
Open that up to people. And also, and then, you have sort of talked a lot about your mom and touched a little bit on your own illness. On the heels of your surgery, how has your life changed? How have you changed your behaviors, being a person who is an overachiever and an incredibly accomplished, busy person? How is it that you have sort of, made yourself, reprogrammed yourself to live a more balanced life?
Yeah, well, that's so important, right? So when my mom got diagnosed, at some point, I would make sure I came home and spent time with her without my phone, and then I started to slip.
Yeah.
And then I remember I caught myself, and I'd be like, Mom, hold on, I got to get this email out. And then at some point, I got really mad, and I was like, wow, I need to change. And then, of course, God threw another brick at my head and said, let's really slow you down. So since my experience, I've had a lot of time to think and reflect, and I was a super type A, overachieving woman who wanted to make my parents proud, wanted to work really, really hard, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I say this all the time, and I speak all over the country. We've gone from being human beings to human doings. We're going, pushing, and we're always fighting for more, and we never give ourselves a break. And as women, we are really, really, really bad at this. We're everything to everyone and nothing to ourselves. And, for the most part, I've come across women who were just like me, who, when their bodies made noises, we were like, shut up, body, I'm busy. I don't have time for you. I can't go to the doctor, I don't have time. But if our car makes a noise, we take it to the mechanic and we're like, hey, fix it. We have to love ourselves enough to do that. And we have to love each other enough to push each other to do that. And so, thank you.
So how do you do that?
So part of it is for me, it was surrendering. I had to give up. I remember writing letters to my family, Kevin and my dad, especially to my dad. And in the letter, I said, I said to him, Dad, when I come out the other side, I'm going to live a very different life, and you may not have things to boast about and be proud of anymore, because I'm not going for that anymore. I just want to be happy and healthy. And that's all that matters to me now. And so it's not going to be about career achievements. It's not going to be about being the most successful person ever. I just want to be healthy. And so I live my life daily as much as I can, putting my health first. And that means my emotional health, my spiritual health, and my physical health. It's everything. And so that's what I want to implore on you is don't wait for that moment where you get that diagnosis. Attack your health with the same ferocity that you attack your careers, because you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, and I think, it's one thing to sort of absorb that message, and it's so important to hear, and your story is so inspiring. I think it's another thing to really break it down into the micro moments. It's sort of, I am constitutionally unable to say no when somebody asks me a favor, and I think that you do sometimes have to say no.
Oh, I've
How
set
do you
new
do that?
boundaries. So I created an email, an automatic email, which I know is not possible for everyone, but there's a way to modify it for you, and you'll have to figure that out because only you know your life. But it was actually before even my tumor. I was already in this process. So I created an automated email because I'm sure you all get emails that someone else on your team should be handling, but because you're super type A and you're going to respond instantly, they go to you, right? Anybody?
Definitely.
And so I created an email that said, I learned it from Tim Ferriss because he tells people he's only checking his email once a day at a certain hour, and then you're not a slave to everyone else's demands of your time. And that was something I really wanted to fix because I wanted to be with my mom more. And so I put in there, if this is a PR request, reach out to this person. If it's this request, go to this person. And I don't respond. And so I've filtered my inbox down to just the people I need to interact with and just the people I need to work with, because everyone's gonna want your time. And as much as you wanna be there for everybody, and by the way, someone emails me on my radio show email, I call them instantly when they're like, my husband just got diagnosed with brain cancer. Those things get my attention instantly. But it's like, can you come to this event? Can you come to that? Can you babysit my kid? Whatever. It's like, you know what you have to filter in your life, and meditation. So
that was my next question.
Stillness is the most important part of getting to that place and listening, right? So I would never have heard the messages, or when I met someone, I would have never understood why they were coming into my life. Now I see everything having a purpose, and it's not a coincidence. God is sending people to me or putting me on that path for a reason. And I look at it all and I'm like, oh, of course, thank you. And so with stillness, you're able to hear things, whether it's your body or, the universe talking to you.
Which is antithetical to everything that got you to where you are.
Exactly.
And I think that's the hard sort of lesson to unlearn, even though I think motion is life as well. And I think we all probably in this room operate at a very high level. But I think retraining yourself. And so do you do yoga? What do you do for?
I really like to meditate, and I've got 2 that I can share with you that you guys will love. So if you have 16 minutes, the Soul Sync on YouTube. It's great. She leads you through it. Sometimes I only have 5 minutes. Like before my radio show, if I'm running around prepping for my show and I'm like, oh, I have an extra 5 minutes, I use Headspace. 10 minutes, because they guide you through and it's super easy. Anytime I'm revving high, like before, and I'm sure you've done this where you're like, oh my God, I have to do this, and I gotta do that, and I gotta get here. And I would rev so high, and then I'd get angry and really stressed. Now, the second that might happen, which doesn't happen often anymore because it's really become a habit for me not to, I'll sit down for 5 minutes and I'll meditate, and then I have a clearer mind and I make better decisions, and it really does work. But you have to become disciplined at making yourself matter. And by doing these things, you're making yourself matter. And the other thing that I learned is, for me, another important mission is to redefine success. Success is not Chanel bags, everybody. Success isn't, being a billionaire. Success is being healthy and happy and living your passion and living your true self. And it's easy to get wrapped up in it. Trust me, I know. And so if you aren't happy with what you're doing every day and you're just doing it for money, please find something else, because it will eventually lead to your demise. And ultimately, we're here for such a short time. So do what you love and money will come.
Amen.
I had to surrender paychecks, and I had to be okay with that.
Say no, right?
And honestly, after 2 brain tumors, I was like, I don't care anymore. Whatever happens, happens. If I have to like couch surf at some point, I will do it. I don't care anymore.
That's incredibly inspiring.
And I meant it. And guess what? God provides anyway.
Amen. and there's also you and all of the, I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I can take that in. But there's also, you've got to give yourself credit for actually recognizing that you were at a physical breaking point and saying, I've got to change something and make it better. And also the sort of the openness to, I think that whenever you put something out there, you want, you need help in an area, and then it just appears. I think it's just, you're ready for it. I think that's so much of it. Yeah. And how you prime yourself to be ready is in asking those questions. So to get really sort of tactical, what are 3 things that we can do, that we can take home in order to, because everybody in this room is, successful enough to be here. And this is, an extraordinary group of women and a few men. I see some men here. But I think that there is something in the asking yourself, what do I want, rather than, things come at you and you deal with them, and yes, you're moving upward and there's progress and, the trappings of success or whatever, but the asking of yourself, what do I want?
Yeah.
Do I not want to do this? Why am I doing this? What are our mantras?
Okay, I have so much that went into my brain right now. I hope I remember everything. Okay, really fast. One of the biggest things that I kept in my head that got me through this was that life is happening for me, not to me. I learned that at a Tony Robbins seminar, and it has been money, because life is happening for you. God, the universe, whatever you believe in, there's a reason it's happening for you. Even a brain tumor, trust me. This was the biggest gift I've ever gotten in my life. I'm a completely different person, and I didn't know this kind of happiness existed, and I had the hardest 2 years of my life. And so I keep a pain journal, and a pain journal is so important in your little notes folder in your iPhone. Mark down on every day you have different pains. So when you go to get your annual physical, which you're all going to make sure you do from now on, you can sit there with him or her and say, well, these are some interesting patterns that I'm seeing. Maybe we should get checked for this. And get second opinions and third opinions, because you'd be surprised how many people I've coached. Actually, 30 out of 31 people at this point haven't gotten second opinions on the most major of surgeries they could have. So keeping a pain journal is so important. Keeping a journal of different moments in your life and how you handled them. Like, I have a journal in my phone. If I had it here, I'd read it to you guys. But basically, any kind of revelation I have, I write down. It's actually called Revelations. So I'll remember. So, for example, I'm an ambassador for Rally Health, the most kismet of relationships ever, because they have a similar mission to me, and I want to help people take those easy first steps towards their health. When I work with them, I am 1,000 feet tall. I float. I'm so happy. Yeah. I love them, and I love working with them. That wasn't the case a lot of my life. And so I know how I work best now. I work best when I'm with people who are supporting and loving, not trying to tear me down and hold me down and hurt me. But I didn't recognize those patterns before. But now I see it, and I avoid it like the plague. It doesn't matter what they want to give me or what they can offer me. I want nothing to do with that energy anymore. But I wouldn't remember it if I didn't have that folder of all of these things that I've seen, how I've handled different situations, where I feel my best, what makes me happiest. I've also redefined what happiness is to me. so that I can access it more easily during my days, and that it's not a trip to Disney World or something that's so far out of reach. It's something that I can do every day to make sure I'm happy. Smelling flowers, hugging my dog. Anytime I'm unhappy, I know I can go to this list and do these 3 things or one of these 3 things, and I'm gonna access happiness, guaranteed, no questions asked. Those are really important things. And so focus equals feeling is another thing I learned. And really working on your personal development, again, as much as you're working on your career. So reading these books by a Tony Robbins or Esther Hicks, Ask and It Is Given. And I think that that's such an incredible book. And Radical Remission, which was awesome. I have a newsletter that I put out through my radio show all the time, and I share all of these things in there. But it's so important to work on yourself and make sure you're strong for these moments. And I had been doing a lot of that work, and I know that that helped. But focus equals feeling. Whatever we focus on is what we're going to feel. If we want to focus on the negative in our life, that's what we're going to feel. And guess what? We're going to attract that, as we know with laws of attraction. So the second I'm feeling badly, I shift to something that's going to make me feel good. And then guess what? If you read Ask and It Is Given, you will see that it's almost like a vibration you're putting out that then attracts more of that. And that's what I want, and so I shift myself really quickly. So these mantras, life is happening for me, not to me, and focus equals feeling, have really helped me through this process.
Thank you so much. This has been incredibly inspiring.
Thank
And
you.
I know there are probably some questions if we have time for them.
Anybody got a question? Hi.
Hi. First of all, you are so amazing and inspirational. I love everything about you, and everything you said just resonated and just reaffirmed everything in my whole life. And sorry, I know, because I just also had a thing with my mom and health, and so all the feels. But you talked about how your faith is very important to you, but you also talked about like physical wellness. And so I'm curious if you have any practices that you engage in that might combine that or feed off of each other, or do you kind of compartmentalize them?
In terms of like spiritual healing and physical healing?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I fully understand, but I know that I and my mom, like there's a great documentary, by the way, called Heal that Kelly Goris did. There's a woman in there that does a lot of spiritual counseling and stuff. And so I thought that was really important for me and for my mom to do. I've done hypnotherapy, which is really great because it's not like, you are getting sleepy kind of stuff. It's like you have like almost like a really great therapy appointment, and then she does a meditation of everything that you've worked on in that session and want to work on, and then you sleep to it, and it becomes part of your subconscious, and you start to make the changes. And so I've done a lot of that stuff, and I just think it's so important because it's a 360 approach that we have to take to all of this. So if we're only doing one part, you're going to miss out on everything else, and it's going to hinder your success. Does that answer your question? Or was there something else? Because I feel like I'm missing something.
Like physical fitness, like fitness-wise, I can tell you're a fit person. I just didn't know, like, do you incorporate yoga or jogging or spinning? Or like physical aspects of your spiritual fitness that feed off of each other.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my physical fitness that I engage in is stuff that makes me feel good. It's not like I'm not doing weights anywhere. I'm playing pickleball and hiking and, smelling flowers along the way. And it's feeding my soul as much as it's giving me kind of physical results. So, thank you.
I'm Joy. I have a tech and travel blog called Part-Time Exploradora and podcast.
Can you move the mic up?
Oh, sorry. I have so my whole thing is like tech. So I have a tech and travel blog called Part-Time Exploradora and another one called a podcast called Basic Browners. And I think for me, it's always been really difficult to lean into like a more accepting of a universal type of thing. Like you're talking a lot about spirituality and I'm kind of like triggered. And like my parents are pastors, right? So I'm very like STEM based. And I kind of am curious as to like how you kind of leaned into that. And I think especially now in like modern day that we try to compartmentalize everything. So kind of like, I don't know if that's like something that's too much, but
No, not at all.
just how did you like deal with that being with so much like eyes on you always, just kind of leaning into your own spirituality?
I think, it's been a process, but when you get dealt a diagnosis like this, I mean, that's usually when people turn to something, right? And God's always been a big part of my life. And I think he's answered my prayers so many times because my dad was a severe type 1 diabetic, and he almost died 1,000,000 times, and I'd have to revive him, and I'd have to use my gut to know if he was okay. Sometimes 3,000 miles away in the middle of the night, I would have a feeling, and I would call and wake up my mom, and my dad was in a coma. And so I've used that instinct and that gut feeling that, by the way, most, I think, if not all women have. I just listen to it. And I'm okay with someone saying that I'm crazy. And I had a really amazing mystic on my show recently. Her name is Deirdre Hade. And she said, replace crazy with wise. We are not crazy. That is the last message I'm going to give you.
That's a good mantra.
We are not crazy. We are wise. And you just have to listen. And if you're still and you're meditating and you're not running around like a crazy person in this massive rat race of life that we're really living in right now, and you focus and you listen, you will know the difference. You just have to act on it and be brave.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.